Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1567 of our daily content grind. So, it's after the holidays. I know we would all just like to sit back and kick back with all of our new toys, and I would love to talk about my new toys to you today, but frankly, I'm not done messing with them all. So, while we are still waiting on that, and while we are still on our content grind, let's do a history lesson today, shall we? What you see on screen is a Transformer gum kit, which is to say it is a mini model kit that comes with a stick of gum. So in the 2000s, you will recall that Kabaya was releasing a lot of modern kits for modern Transformer designs and, certain classic ones as well. And we did a few reviews of those on the channel, and they're fine. They're all well and good. However, these date back a long time. Kabaya was doing this for Transformers back in 1985. Nothing that ever came over to America, of course, but if you wanted a low-cost Transformer with some assembly required, scratch that, all assembly required, Kabaya had your back. So, these were released in multiple waves of usually about 4 or 5, and typically they were designed to be run with just like about 3 plastic colors across the entire wave, which led to some interesting figures. But the overall result were toys that could transform reasonably well. Some required some part forming, but for the most part, they functioned like their larger versions. So let's just go through. I'll show you some examples because this is mostly just kind of showing off how weird this got. And that starts with Megatron, just to kind of give you like a baseline. And frankly, for a low-cost model kit that came with a stick of gum, Megatron looks fine here. He's a Walther P38, looks pretty much like the original toy outside of, paint on the face, which would have been nice. Yeah, like, there's really not a lot to complain for how little you would have paid for this. These things were like 200 yen in 1985 yen, so that says a lot. But still, surprisingly effective, right? And here's the Optimus Prime. And form-wise, yeah, you can kind of see this. And then you go, wait a minute. Why are his lower arms gray? Why are his legs black? I know not the answer to these questions. However, it is a simple fact we must maintain. So, like I said, most figures that shared a wave came in the exact same colors, and they really liked to just push dark blue, light gray, and red as the color of pretty much any Transformer they could get away with. Even Convoy himself was not spared. And I don't know why the molds were assembled the way they were, so that his lower arms weren't part of any red sprue, but that's just what we have to accept here. I presume it's because the boxes were so small, they had to like spread all the parts out across the sprues that they had. Otherwise, like, all the red parts would end up in a sprue that's way too big for the box, or they'd have to print multiple sprues, which would be more expensive. These were dirt cheap. Can't have that. It leads to some interesting color combinations, like Starscream here, who is looking very, like bright thrust, right? It's super weird to see, like, Starscream in, like, stark red. Like, I feel like this should have been the G2 color scheme. I mean, weirdly enough, it doesn't look horrible. That's the takeaway I have from this. It doesn't look horrible, but it definitely doesn't look like Starscream, especially today. Like, in 1985, sure, there's only so many Seekers to go around. They didn't even have thrust in Japan at the time, so there was no red Seeker. So you just associated red with Starscream, and there you go. It's just ironic that the colors are swapped, right? Like, I feel like red body and gray everything else would have been way closer than what they've done. Why they inverted it, I have no idea. Call it shattered glass Starscream if you want to. They did big toys as well, shrunken down into the small ones. This Fortress Maximus is capable of pretty much everything the original one could, save for the original Headmaster gimmick. That one was a little bit beyond its tiny size, but This is the kind of stuff I advocate for a lot. There's a lot of characters and designs I really love in Transformers, but I don't always want to have gigantic ones that take entire shelves all by themselves. Sometimes I want tiny ones that can sit on my desk. This would have scratched that itch had this actually been a thing in the US. Unfortunately, no, but still. Yeah, if you were in Japan and you dropped 200 yen, you too could have a very tiny Fortress Maximus, and everything seems to work. And the colors here are fine. You know, you can use a little bit of paint to clean it up, but for the most part, it's fine. And then you have Galvatron here, who looks like he's still dripping from the plasma of whatever that planet was he got thrown onto, that I can never remember the name of. It's weird to see Galvatron with no purple, right? Like, he looks like orange safety Megatron that they tried to pitch to get a G1 Megatron reissue through to the US. Weird, right? But, like, what's important here is, like, the main color is there, so it's identifiable as Galvatron's G1 toy. It just happens to be much smaller with orange instead of purple. Frankly, it doesn't even look that bad. It just looks weird. But at least the color arrangement, aside from like a black head, which is a little bit odd, aside from that, the color placement is, for the most part, fine. You know, it doesn't, you know, visually, it still looks like Galvatron. Here's Rodimus. Rodimus, who looks like he hasn't been finished painting yet. Rodimus, who looks like he's been sandblasted. I'm not entirely sure why this was a situation they went with. I assume it's because all that red space on his sprue had to go to the trailer, because obviously that was that was a bigger priority than, you know, coloring Rodimus Prime correctly. Granted, no orange sprue. Like we said, it's just red, gray, and black in this one. So no real surprise they cheaped out, but it still looks weird, right? It still looks really, really weird. So that's the tour I'm going to take you on right now. We are going to ping pong back and forth between the Kabaya kits I could find that are basically normal looking, and then the ones that are super weird. So we're going to get a back and forth, okay? Just to show you how, like, disjointed this toy set was. And it's going to start with Reflector. And I was actually surprised that Reflector, of all toys, ended up getting, a candy toy model kit release. Kind of weird. But then again, I can't remember if it's Spectro or Viewfinder. It's one or the other. Spectro, Viewfinder, Spyglass. Does not matter. Only one of these is off color. We should have a blue robot along with the red one. The one on the left should be blue. So yeah, for the most part, that's actually spot on. And they still completely work. They still go into camera mode together. And then we get to, yeah. Yeah. We get into what Japan had as 6-Night, what we got as Quick Switch. Man, this one is weird. Like, not only because, like, the color for him should be teal. He has this, like, ocean green teal color scheme to his plastic that is completely missing here. And while it kind of brings him in line with, like, traditional Autobot colors a little bit more, it's compounded by the fact that it's just kind of haphazardly thrown into all of his modes. It's super weird just to have, like, that super bright block of plastic on top of, like, the boat mode, for instance. Super weird. Like, it's only one color shade off, but it makes it so weird looking. It is knockoff-ish, but that's because, similar to knockoffs, it's produced as cheap and quick as possible. So no real surprise there. Surprising is if I go to his counterpart, Sixshot, who's looking pretty good, honestly. Again, all 6 modes are there. We acknowledge Sixshot is not the most complicated Transformer in the world. So, it's actually not a surprise that you can replicate so many of his forms in such a small size. But somehow, like, his switch from his, like, teal green to blue is so much nicer than what Quick Switch did. Like, it just feels like it's only one color shade off, and it still feels like Sixshot. So this one is a little bit more cooperative, let's say. It's not such a grand departure that it's throwing my head off for whatever reason. Let's head back to the weird. Do we want to do weird again? Sure, let's do weird. Here's Deathsaurus. Here's the Death Chicken in bright red. Now, weirdly enough, I want to say Brave eventually did this with the mold. I could swear, like, Deathsaurus was reused to make a Brave villain. I'm not entirely up on my Brave that is not Galvatron, but so if I'm misremembering, I apologize. I just distinctly remember seeing this before in the full-size toy, and I feel like that's where it was. It's so weird to me because they have the gray, they have the blue, they choose to use the red. I explained this before, but at some point it feels like it gets ridiculous. We see that, like, because of, like, you could see just, like, the size of the wings, how much of the box space it would take up to have both of those on one sprue. For these kits, you're essentially looking at one blue sprue, one gray sprue, one red sprue, and they all have to fit in that one box within budget. So that is why you get these super weird colors. I can imagine if they had, like, customizers back then the way they do now, where we have these, like, really modern advanced paints that are really thin but still provide these, like, really vibrant, strong color, little super tiny brushes that are incredibly accurate. I can imagine this would have been just, everyone's dream. Like, super cheap figures that are all detailed, but just ripe for customizing. These would have been so good for your early customizers. Now, in contrast, let's talk about his rival. We've done a few rivalries here already, switching back and forth. Saber's almost immaculate. And there's a few little weird things, like the blue wings on his chest, but stickers cover that up for the most part. Blue for his antenna and faceplate. But I wish there was, like, at least a gray sticker there, but at the very least, that looks like Saber. That's just a super tiny Saber. And funny enough, it's actually doing its job pretty good. Like, that just does a lot of what Saber does, right down to that base mode that I hate so much. Look at it. Look at it. Like, he's not doing anything wrong. He's fine. He's a tiny little Saber. Like, this would actually be worth tracking down for, like, my dedicated collection, should I ever be crazy enough to even attempt it. But again, this is why I like little candy toys like this. Let's make these really neat tiny versions of a toy rather than those gigantic ones that don't always fit your desk. Case in point, I've always wanted a tiny little Trypticon. Maybe it's the My Clone. Maybe it's a third party. The one I have now is third party. But Kabaya had a solution back then. Granted, it wasn't a great solution. This doesn't look like Trypticon anymore. Like, the colors are now so far off that we've gone beyond Trypticon and entered a realm of potential repaint. Or, like, this is shattered glass Trypticon. If we ever want to shatter glass Trypticon, this is a perfect color scheme for him. It's crazy. He doesn't look like a Transformer. He looks like a Zoid. He almost looks like a Zoid at this point. Like Gojulus, is that the one I'm thinking of? It's crazy how off he is. And look, he still has full tilt and brunt. They're just little accessories, but they have that. It's like super cool that they didn't, like, leave that out. He's still capable of at least that playability. Yeah, this might be the weirdest one. Across everything, this might be the weirdest one. But hey, it's interesting at least, right? It's at least interesting because it's so radically different. Probably because the same wave included Metroplex or Metroflex in Japan. But here, again, for the most part, everything's in the right spot. Like the colors are generally where they are supposed to be. Shortcuts taken, absolutely. Weirdly enough, when I looked this up, the stock photos didn't have a city mode. And I think that's just because it's missing some of the vitals, like the tower, little accessory pieces. So all you have is the rolling base mode, which does make him significantly less cool than the Trypticon, who has the base mode, or Fortress Maximus, who has both base and flight modes. I don't know, it's still kind of neat. It still falls in that realm of, it's kind of cool to see the big guys in such a tiny size. And at least this was not too far off from its normal colors. Hi, Mind Wipe. Hello, Mind Wipe. So here we go again. They gotten weird once more. So the Headmasters were mostly done in red, beige, and black plastic for some reason, and everyone was just as close as they could get. So again, you end up with a Mind Wipe who looks like they really could be a Shattered Glass or even a completely different character completely. Now, the neat thing about this is that the Headmaster stuff still works. Like, I think the stat drum in the chest, I think that's just a fixed sticker. I don't think that actually works. But the head does come off and transform, even at that tiny little size, which I think is really, really cool and really, really impressive. It's just so weird to me. It's so weird. And even the contrast to that is that Chrome Dome came out fine, you know, like he's a lot more black than he is his like dark red color, but that still strikes Chrome Dome. I don't think like that's a completely new character. It's a repaint. No, I think it's just a color shifted Chrome Dome. I really wanted to find photos of the Hardhead from this range, because he's done in like blue instead of the green. Unfortunately, like I could not find photos of him, even like searching in Japanese and searching Yahoo Auctions Japan. I could not find existence of this toy. I know it's out there. I could not find photographic proof in time for this video. These are really hard to find actual like photography from, by the way. Most of this is from TF Wiki, a few from Yahoo Auctions, but there's so much from the Transformers Gum toy line that's just completely undocumented and it's very hard to track down, including like there is a range of like we're talking about 200 yen model kits. There was a range of 60 yen model kits that included mini bots, and I cannot find hide nor hair of them. TF Wiki cannot find hide nor hair of them. We know they existed, but info and photos extremely scarce. So there's like a weird bit of like history lost here as far as Transformer media goes. So it's an important thing of like why I talk about things like this and why I kind of share the history that I find. But let's get back onto it. Let's get into like more like, oh man, he looks weird. Let's take a look at Darkwing. Now, there is a Dreadwind to go with this, and I do believe they can make the Dreadwing combination, I think. Now, admittedly, this is Hydra, not Darkwing, so the red is part of the character, so at least there's that. But if you know the character in the toy is Darkwing ahead of Hydra, this is really weird. And I hope I'm getting all those names straight, because Darkwing and Dreadwind and Hydra and Buster always throw me off somewhere in there. I think I've got it right, though. I'm going to give it credit. You know, at least the Power Master's still there. I mean, like, it's not going to unlock the alt mode. But, you know what? At least it's there. How about another normal one? Let's look at Super Ginrai. And again, this looks fairly okay. Like, the head on the super mode is huge. But besides that, like, for a kit in a one box, like, this is pretty impressive. Like, the truck mode is all there. The individual cab mode is there. The base mode is there. This is a pretty impressive piece. This is actually a pretty cool piece. I would actually be really thrilled to have them at a tiny size like this. But I need to go back to a weird one, don't I? What else do I have here? All right. My boy. They did triple changers for Transformers Gum as well. And just like a lot of these others. Blitzwing was restricted to a color scheme for a far more important character than he in his wave. So we have a gray and red Blitzwing. This more leans toward like it's actually like leaning heavily in toward the platinum version that we did for Toycember, which is an amusing irony. It's not intentional because the platinum does not have the gray that this one has, but still I can imagine gray tank mode, red jet mode. This would probably still work visually, but again, it feels like color scheme if he had taken Rodimus up on his offer to become an Autobot. It doesn't feel like natural Blitzwing colors, obviously not, but it's fascinating to see what the alternate was. This is the kind of stuff FunPub would have gone nuts over. Like, this is the level of obscure they would have made a whole BotCon set out of if they had the right molds available at the time. I'm going to show you some of the weirdest ones now to wrap us up, okay? So brace yourselves. This is where it gets odd. I know. Now's when it gets odd. They did Pretenders. Of all things, they did Pretenders as candy toy kits. Now you can see they desperately needed paint. The shells especially just have an unsettling look to them when they do not have any kind of paint to them. But you know what? It's doing its job. Now, the weird thing here is that the arms on this is actually what's holding the shells together, not individual tabs. But it's doing its job. The shell works. The inner robot hides in there. Inner robot can still transform. And I think it says a lot about Pretenders that you can shrink them down to this size and lose absolutely none of the functionality. Now, Metal Hawk here has obviously lost a lot of his gold, but for the most part, he looks okay-ish. Aside from the big splotch of gray that is his shell, he comes through a lot better than, say, Diver, aka Landmine, who now looks like this. I'm sorry. This is not Diver. This is not Diver whatsoever. This looks like Roboto from He-Man. Like, this does not look like the same character in the least. Oh, so we had to make some pretty big stretches of our imagination in order to get some of these in. But hey, we got them in. That's the important part, right? And what's crazier to me is that Kabaya actually did combiners back then. Now, these would come in 2 packs for the smaller pieces, so they'd be much smaller. But, you would get 2 in 1 box, and they'd be very, very simple, but they would work. They would effectively transform into vehicle mode and limb, which is impressive at that size. Especially when you're talking something like Piranhacon. Where here, if you want to call him King Poseidon, since it's the Japanese version, he looks fine. I mean, yes, missing a little paint, but it's a model kit with a stick of gum. What do you expect? All the colors are there, and because it's like that's strict, like everyone has to be one of these 3 colors in a set like that. It actually works because everyone's supposed to match, and it looks great. Well, they got ambitious prior to this, and they tried to do a Raiden. Now, this was not multiple kits put together. This is 1 kit, which you could probably guess by the fact that he is all white, gray, and blue with no variation in between. You'll also question, well, I see the train modes on the side, but they're not all there. So here's the fun part. Only the arms transform. The arms and the legs transform. They pop off, they become the train modes, and that's it. They do not have individual robot modes. And then the torso itself, made up of the other 2 train bots, does not separate, does not transform. It's a plastic block. Now, if you're asking me, we're still waiting to see what Age of the Prime's Nexus Prime looks like. I'm willing to bet it's going to work like this. Except for, the torso will actually transform into something. But yeah, this was daring. Let's give it credit and call it daring. Because this is not exactly going to appease many Raiden fans. But hey, they tried. So, there's a lot of these. No, not enough, too many for us to go into like a huge history lesson and do like one of my here's the entire line videos. Now, Kabaya also continued these into Beast Wars, which is far more limited, so at some point down the road, we will do an entire retrospective of the Beast Wars toys. However, for now, it's kind of a brief look at a super weird little sect of Transformer G1 toys most never really paid attention to. There's some oddballs in there, some super weird color choices, but also strangely well-made ones got worked in as well. It's an extremely big hit and miss toy line. So let me know in the comments below, since this is a bit of a history lesson video, what you thought of this little trip down someone's memory lane. And as usual, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for following. Thank you for the support this year. It's meant the world to me. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.